Now we turn to a major developing story today with implications for American politics and journalism and international affairs. This is huge regardless of how you may feel about the man at the center of it, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, arrested and handcuffed this morning, led out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London in response to a new indictment by the Trump Justice Department. This is part of their new extradition request. Now, Assange is controversial for many reasons, from the way WikiLeaks operates to some of the allies it has earned, leakers to indicted Putin operatives to candidate Trump to indicted former Trump advisor Roger Stone to other serious allegations against Assange, like sexual misconduct in Sweden. So there are all kinds of valid reasons to critique Assange at WikiLeaks. But the news tonight isn't really about criticism or Assange's role in American politics. The news is the U.S. government's indicting a publisher of information on a single charge that does not involve him actually stealing information, but rather a charge about this publisher communicating with the person who stole the information and then allegedly trying to help the person in a plan that did not allegedly steal information. Now, I just said that all to you very carefully, which I try to do here. If that description sounds a little broad or a little vague or a little tenuous, that's because the new charge from the Trump Justice Department does sound that way. And this means that if Assange did go farther than most journalists would, if the Trump administration can set a precedent of indicting and jailing publishers, the press, for information they publish in a situation where the publisher did not allegedly steal anything themselves, but mostly talk to the people who did, well, I'm telling you tonight, that precedent might later be used against other publishers who maybe did less. Because that's how precedents work. Historically, when governments want to jail journalists, they don't start with the most popular ones. They start often with the most reviled, the ones that are the easiest to make some sort of example out of. Now, today's indictment of Assange isn't about 2016 or anything recent. It's a single charge of conspiracy to hack in 2010. Now, it's not a charge of hacking because prosecutors aren't alleging right now that the hack succeeded. If this conduct happened in 2010, that brings us to another question. Why wasn't it charged then? You may know prosecutors have probed WikiLeaks for quite some time. During the Obama administration, prosecutors convicted Chelsea Manning for stealing and leaking hundreds of thousands of classified documents from the U.S. government, which exposed all kinds of activities by the U.S. as well as other countries. And those were considered very newsworthy leaks. They were covered, of course, by a wide range of media here and abroad, including this network, and they sparked some major impacts on global affairs.
91,000 documents have been released on the internet by the whistleblower website WikiLeaks.org, and they have more.
Some analysts comparing them to the Pentagon Papers.
Tonight, after violent protests that have lasted for weeks, the Tunisian government has fallen. The president has fled, and some are calling this the first WikiLeaks revolution.
The first WikiLeaks revolution. Now, impactful journalism is obviously not a defense to other alleged crimes. But it was leaks like that which won WikiLeaks, the organization, a range of journalistic awards. The Obama administration's DOJ never indicted WikiLeaks publicly, despite its opposition to how they ran. And it reviewed what appeared to be similar conduct regarding this 2010 issue, because they indicted, as I mentioned, Chelsea Manning, and they reviewed a case against Assange and concluded it was not warranted. Now, as for the person who gave the information to WikiLeaks, President Obama ultimately commuted her sentence, saying she took responsibility for what was criminal leaking and she shouldn't spend too much time in jail.
With respect to Chelsea Manning, I looked at the particulars of this case. I felt that in light of all the circumstances, that commuting her sentence was entirely appropriate. She took responsibility for her crime, that the sentence that she received was very disproportionate relative to what other leakers had received.
Why am I telling you all this right now? Because there is a lot of context, like a lot, for the Trump DOJ going forward here on these actions from 9 years ago that the Obama DOJ did not deem chargeable. The case against Assange could get stronger. There could be other counts based on other secret evidence we don't have tonight. And we know Bob Mueller wanted a lot more from Assange, as do the feds, on many, many topics. But working with what we have now, the indictment unsealed today doesn't show Assange actually stealing anything or coordinating with foreign spies or doing espionage. It's a single count of conspiring to do something that allegedly did not happen, which makes the indictment an aggressive and potentially chilling document for journalists in the U.S. or abroad. It shows this leaker, Manning, telling Assange, after this upload, that's all I really have got left. And then Assange pushes for more leaks, saying, curious eyes never run dry in my experience, the kind of communication that some reporters have with sources. And then it alleges Assange crossed a line that reporters are not supposed to cross, offering help with potentially stealing itself to try to crack a password. Now, it doesn't allege, at least in what we got today, that they succeeded. Now, that sounds bad, and that single bad part, I want you to know, is also the whole case. The allegation section of this indictment runs 2.5 pages. The whole thing, the entire charges, are 6 pages. It would be easy to view this case only through the U.S. government lens. And if you hear government officials from many parties, that's what you'll hear. Assange took on the U.S. government, published leaks that undercut it. They don't like that. They have every right to voice their opposition to that. You could also view this only from the mystery lens and say, man, Julian Assange upended the 2016 election. What does he know about Putin and collusion and things that even the Mueller report may not answer? Let's get him here and interview him. But there's also tonight a nonpartisan lens of freedom of information. What checks should exist on the Trump administration charging and extraditing a publisher, not for stealing or espionage, but for one conspiracy count about how he tried to help a source and whether that crossed a line? That lens, I think, is part of why the Obama Justice Department was careful, a point that I actually recently discussed with Eric Holder. This was last month, which we now know is a time period when Assange had been indicted under seal, but that information was not public. Now there is an open case that appears to be looking at WikiLeaks for charges. Should a publisher like that be open to charges by the U.S. government?
Well, you know, if you are acting in a pure journalistic sense, no. I mean, you know, I deplore leaks. We brought cases against people who were leakers. Members of the press receive those leaks and then write stories about them. If, on the other hand, you're acting at the behest of a foreign power, you are in a fundamentally different position. And I don't view that person or that organization as a pure, that person is a pure journalist, or that organization as a journalistic organization.
That's how Holder put the balancing test on the issue. As with all matters of government versus the press, part of the challenge isn't the rules in the abstract. Think about it like this. Who do you trust applying those rules? Do you trust your government reflexively? Are you skeptical of government power because it is awesome power to arrest, to investigate, to jail, to execute? It is a power that can end up in just about anyone's hands.
I'm talking about the fake news media. They are truly an enemy of the people. The fake news, enemy of the people. They really are.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.